Hey y'all, I'm James Wright and welcome to the shop. Today we are making a straight razor cover. Now I was at a tool meet not too long ago and I found a set of, I think it was like 35 of these hand-forged tool covers made by the HMC Cutlery Company. These are all hand-forged and hand-cut, old stock steel and hardened. And I have been wanting to make a straight razor for a while because it's just a cool thing to have. And this was one of these opportunities that I could not pass up. So I purchased all 35 of them and I am going to be selling a kit so you can make this and follow along with the build. But for today, let's actually go into looking at how to make the cover for a straight razor and have a little bit of fun with it. Here are the blanks I got from HMC Cutlery Company, handmade from Massachusetts. They were made sometime around 1918 to 1930, somewhere in that time frame. They are hand forged and in beautiful shape. They're hardened and ready to go. So the first thing I need to do is figure out exactly the scale I want. And I took a bunch of pictures of different scales that I liked and different adjustments to it. And originally I was going to do something kind of origami-ish, in other words, making it all squared and angled and lots of chamfers. And I thought, no, let's actually do something a little bit more organic on this one. So we're doing just simple sloping curves. It's kind of like a really long bean, how it has a concave on one side and convex on the other. This particular wood that I'm working with was listed as teak. It's not actual teak, but it's somewhat similar, just a little bit softer than actual teak. And I thought it would work really well for this. It has a beautiful grain structure when you finish it, so I thought this would be a good test subject. The next one I do, I might actually do it with an inlaid piece in there or do something a little bit more interesting. But in this case, this will make a really nice one. So the first thing I do is I draw out the pattern on one side of this. It is a little over a ½ inch thick, and then I'm going to resaw it down the middle to basically have two scales that are about a ½ inch thick. Actually, I think they're slightly over a ½ inch. And then we're going to plane down the saw marks so they are smooth on both sides. I want to create a mating surface between these two scales, so when they go together, they make a really nice flat joint. Then I have the hole marked out where the pin should be for the fulcrum. We're going to drill that out with a 3/32 drill bit, and you can see how they'll go together. Now, one thing I noticed on these particular blades is that they are thinner where the pin goes through and thicker near where the blade starts out. So we actually need to concave the insides of these a little bit so that the knife can swing easily in here. And here you can see I'm actually realizing, I'm going to have to do something to these. So I got my rounded bottom spoke shave and I cleaned out the bottom here and I just marked out exactly where that concavity needs to be. And now you can see how it will pivot nicely and fit in there. The thing that stops the blade from going in is that the blade is actually shaped like a wedge. And so it slides in and that wedge stops it from going farther. Now I'm going to put these two pieces back together with some double-sided tape, and this will allow me to shape them both down to be exactly the same thing. I can put the pin through to make sure that they line up as I want them to stay together. Then I'm going to start grabbing some rasps and files and go to town on this. Round out the outside edges and bring it down to the lines in the pattern that I drew. And then on the other side, I'm going to make it, one end is going to be very thin, and so I'm going to actually cut down at an angle and slice off a little bit. And then on the inside, there is this the concavity. So it's basically a long bean. And that concavity, I'm just going to clean out with a chisel and then come in and smooth that all out with the spoke shave. And this will give me a nice sloping arc to the inside of the body on this. And that little bit of shape is useful in that it allows the back of the blade to stick out and then still have it in line with the blade itself. You'll see a little bit later when it closes up. Now that we've gotten the shape to this all the way around, we're going to take it apart, and we need to actually put a toe block in between this because the back is separated by the iron, but the front needs to have a little bit of separation on there. And that separation should be slightly thinner than the back of the iron. So I measured down about a ½ inch from the iron and took the thickness of the back there, and that is the size of the little block I need to put in there. For this, I have a piece of ebony that I was given a while ago, and it is a beautiful piece of wood. I've slowly been whittling away on it anytime I have a little inlay or something of that nature. I thought this would make a perfect use for this spacer, so I can glue that in between the two pieces of teak. And of course, bring out the dovetail saw and make as nice a clean as cut on this as possible because I want to use more of this in the future. Now that we've made all of our cuts on there, I'm going to take it to the file and smooth it all out on the file, basically planing it to shape and size and thickness with the file and getting a nice mating edge between these. Now, because both of these oils have a decent amount of, both of these woods have a decent amount of oil in them, I'm going to be using epoxy. I have a strong 5-minute epoxy that I use, and smear it onto all surfaces and work it in, and then allow it to expand out so we can push out all of the excess. So put it on one side, connect it on there, put it on the other side, connect it on there, make sure we have epoxy on all the sides. And then I want to put the iron in place because we need to clamp that down, as that will be the spacer for the other side. So we can put a clamp on the iron, and then we put one squeeze clamp on here and let it cure. Make sure that everything's in line. We don't want anything out of place. Then once that has all cured, we can come back in and file the ebony down to shape. And this is where I can start doing some of the finish filing on this. They're even and they stick out the exact same amount all the way around. On the rounded end, you need to be constantly working on rolling the file up and over the edge so you get a nice clean surface. Now, unfortunately, in this case, the grain of the wood are going in 2 different directions. That won't cause an expansion and contraction problem on this because they're so small, but it just makes it a little bit more difficult with the grain orientation for filing. Next, I'm going to put in the vise and start rounding it all off. I have a 4 in hand, and I'm going to start with the file, the rasp edge, and smooth it down into shape. Get a nice even curvature from one side to the other, and then all the way across the 2 mating edges. And this way we can get a nice and clean surface. Once we get it rounded to shape with the rasp, you flip the 4 in hand around and you use the file side. I have a bow sander, and I'm not using this to actually sand the wood as much as it shows off the imperfections of where the file left marks. And then I can come in with a really fine file and remove those marks. The sander just brings out that and allows you to see what it is. The last thing that will touch this is a card scraper because I want to leave all the pores wide open so that they glisten when we add oil. And so a lot of this is just working it down, rounding off the surfaces. You can see I have a flat edge on that, the face facing us. And I'm just going to slowly work until all those flat facets disappear. Then we can put it in place and check it out. Ooh, hey look, it works. Happiness. And this is when I start to get excited because you can see this all coming together. It closes up nicely, and yeah, that's what I'm looking for. And from here on out, we're doing a lot more detailing on the body. So I'm going to spend a good bit of time with a really fine file, making sure I get rid of all of these scuff marks, all of the edges on it, and it cleans up really nicely. Once I get that where I want, I know there's no facets on it, I know there's no lines or edges, then I can bring in the card scraper, and this will scrape it down and give me a really nice clean surface ready for finish. Speaking of which, this is going to be boiled linseed oil and paste wax, some homemade boiled linseed oil. And oh wow, I'm happy with this. The grain in this wood just kind of explodes with color, and yeah, this is a very, very pleasing finish on this. I'll let it soak in with that, about 2 coats of boiled linseed oil, let it cure off, wipe it off, and then apply the paste wax. And now we can see how this all comes together, and it's starting to look pretty good. But now we need to turn our attention to the iron because these come hand forged, and so there's about a 1/16 of an inch of an edge on there, and we need to grind it back to a sharp edge. We're using a 6-inch grinder. There are ways you can do this with just hand tools, either with a hand crank grinder or spending a lot of time with sandpaper on a rounded stick, and I mean a lot of time with sandpaper on a rounded stick. Like probably a good solid day. Even as this, it took me about an hour to grind this down because you do not want to overheat this. And I'll grind it until I get that nice smooth surface, and I brought this down to a clean buffed edge. Keeping sure to wet it down in between each time so you can cool it off. We do not want to heat this up. If at any point it gets too hot to handle, it is too hot. So we want to keep it nice and cool. Once we buffed it down and we've got it that I actually left a bit of the coarse texture on there and buffed it out. I kind of like that brushed sheen on there. Then we can take it over to our plates, and I probably spend about another 20 minutes on here honing that edge and bringing it down into a nice sharp edge. I'm only working on about an 1/8 inch all the way across this. I'm going to be starting with my coarse stone and then going on to my medium stone and then going on to my fine stone. And for the fine stone, I'm probably only going to be doing 30 or 40 strokes on it because most of the work is done with the coarse and the medium. Just holding it on the edge here, trying to keep it right on that line because we want to keep that convex bevel. The angle on this, the cutting angle on this is only a few degrees. It's very, very tiny. So then we can start to strop it. I'll start with a honing compound, and then I'm going to do it on raw leather, and then one of these days I need to get a flexible strop, but in this case I just pulled out my belt, which works really, really well. Hone that down and strop it into place, and it is, oh yeah, I love that when you can feel that really nice sharp edge. And we can start cutting with it. Yeah, skin on your arm works very differently than skin on your face, as the skin on your arm tends to be a little bit more flexible. And so you see it bubbling up in front. But yeah, this is an incredibly clean, butter smooth surface. I was blown away with how that came out. Then I can actually take it over to my edge tester, and I tested it at 120. I could probably hone this down to somewhere just under 100, but anything under like 120 is beautiful for shaving. Now for this, I was going to put a pin in here and rivet it in place or peen it over, but then I found there is a number 4 screw that fits into this absolutely perfectly, and I'm actually going to kind of experiment with this. I'm going to do another one where I'll actually rivet on, but I thought putting the screw in here, it fits in nicely, and then I can round it off, and because it's threaded on all the surfaces, none of it is going to work loose. The blade can't go all the way around, so it can't unscrew. And I was actually really pleased with how well it held in the wood. No glue, just put the screw in. Last, we're going to put a little bit more oil on it, wax it up one more time in any of the spots that I hit with the file or dinged up, and there we go. Yes, I love how this thing came out. It's just a beautiful shape. It feels good in the hand, and I'm incredibly happy. Looking forward to doing one of these live and showing it in more detail. So there you have it. We made the Covenant. This is out of like a teak and the ebony. This is very, very happy. I mean, I like most things that I make because it's just fun to make it, but this one I am incredibly, incredibly happy to work with. And yes, I am going to be using it to shave with. I just shaved last night, so I didn't have a chance to try it, but I am going to be doing that here soon. Now, if you would like to actually build along with this, I am going to be selling all of the other razors, and they're going to come with the blank. It's going to come with a brass pin for it, and then the pattern for making the cover. And then we're actually going to be going through in one of the live videos and building this along. So if you want to do that, I'll leave a link to it down below. Now I only have 35 of these left, and they are old stock steel, hardened and ready to go. So they're a little bit pricey, but I think this is going to be a really fun project and a great way to play around with doing something small in the shop. You don't need a lot, you just need a little piece of wood to work with. So if you want to find out about that, I'll leave a link to it down below, and get ready for the live build coming up here soon. So am I going to be shaving with this? I will shave with this a few times, but I don't know if it'll be my regular razor. But this is a lot of fun to make and have just, this is really beautiful. So I hope you like this build, and if you are wanting to do the build along, let me know, and I am looking forward to doing that as well. So I think this will do it for today. I do want to say a huge thank you to the patrons on Patreon. You guys have been absolutely amazing and are one of the big reasons why this channel is still here today. If you'd like to find out more about that, there's a link to that down below. That's it for now, and until next time, have a minute. Viewer discretion advised. This whole video is very, very edgy.